So, welcome, welcome again. So, to our Procurement Masterclass, Guide to Working with the Orange County Power Authority. And this is sponsored by PACE, Pacific Asian Consortium in Employment. I am Christina Espiritu. So, welcome. Welcome to those ones who are new to PACE and then also to OC Power Authority. And for those of you who've been attending the master classes and the workshops, thank you for returning. And then we'll get started. Okay, just a couple housekeeping items, so make sure you're in listening mode. Please use the raise hand function if you would like, excuse me, to ask questions, and I'll try to get to you that way. Another way would be if you have any questions, to use the Q&A function to post questions. And then after this one, we'll have a little bit of Q&A session towards the end, and then we'll also provide these recordings. So I usually first, a couple things that I do is after each webinar, I do provide a follow-up email to those who have attended and see, if there's with the contact information and also the slides if possible. And then we also have a webinar recording. So please visit our e-library once it's downloaded. And then we also have a survey towards the end. So if you can stay in just a few seconds to answer that, that would be great. And just a little bit of introduction about PACE. PACE stands for Pacific Asian Consortium in Employment. So what we are a nonprofit organization that has been around since the 70s. But the Business Development Center started in the 90s in order to help business entrepreneurs like you with regards to technical one-on-one assistance. So we provide one-on-one consulting. We do entrepreneurship training programs, business courses like this, both online and offline. And then also we do access to capital. So if you have, we are a CDFI, which is a community development financial institution, which means we can lend money. And then we also partner up with a host of banks and other financial institutions if we can provide more access to capital. And we are also, I'm also part of a program called ProcureLA. So ProcureLA is specifically a program that is in conjunction with the Olympics, with FIFA, and then also some other sports and entertainment events that are going on in LA in the next couple years. So we provide our services free of charge through PACE and also through ProcureLA. So if you are a small business looking to grow through contracting, we provide services, as I had mentioned before, the one-on-one consulting and such, and other resources that can help you with your procurement capabilities. So for example, right now, as I said, ProcureLA is a program where we are the procurement arm of the City of LA Mayor Karen Bass's office. So any of the requests for proposals, we can help you with reviewing them and then also applying for them. So there's some eligibility requirements to be part of ProcureLA as here below. However, if you don't meet the eligibility requirements, let's say you're in Orange County, there's some other programs we can put you under. And then also one thing I just wanted to mention, because I always forget, that our services are actually free of charge. So because we run off of government grants, either through the city or the county or the state level, we're able to provide our services free of charge. So I want to make sure you take advantage of that. Okay. So with that said, I would like to welcome our guest today from Orange County Power Authority, Salvia Montes. So I will go ahead and yeah, so feel free to just boot me out with your slides.
All right, perfect.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm excited to present for you here today, and I'm going to load up my screen in just a second. Let me try that one more time. Sorry about that. All right, and are you all able to see my my presentation here?
Yes, I can see it. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thanks again and welcome everybody. My name is Salvia Montes. I'm the Orange County Power Authority's Administrative Services Manager. And what I'm here to talk about today is essentially our procurement and contracting process, but also answer questions from you and teach you a little bit about our business. Maybe you haven't considered working with us before, or maybe you are interested and want to know exactly what we do so you can learn how to position yourself. Whether it's through questions here or, follow-up calls or emailed after, I'm happy to chat with everyone. So thank you again for your time. And again, my name is Saul Viramontes. Let's see. All right, so here's a quick agenda of what we're gonna go over today. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit about what CCAs and community energy are, OCPA's procurement process, contracts, specifically how we approach contracts. And I wanted to add this in here myself because they look intimidating if you've never seen one before, but it's really just templates, and I want to make sure that no one here is discouraged from applying for various bids because of a contract. And then the difference between formal versus informal bids as they apply to our own procurement process. We will touch on requests for proposals. It's a pretty standard process, but in case you're new to them, I'll give you some background on how we approach that. Number 7, how to stand out in RFP proposals. And I will remind you at that point, but this is my perspective. I've worked before I worked with Orange County Power Authority. I worked with the County of Orange for 9 years. Between OCPA and the County of Orange, I've probably been an evaluator for over 30, maybe even 40 requests for proposals. And I've seen a lot of do's and don'ts, and I want to share with you what my favorite are. After that, Orange County Power Authority's core contracts. I call these core contracts because these are services that we have contracted already, and I see us contracting again. That is possible, it could change, but I'm just trying to give you a window into what services we regularly look for. Number 9, how to find open opportunities and solicitations, and number 10 will be all your questions, and as long as you have questions. So I welcome questions in the chat, but Christina, will you be able to help me if anything comes up? Because I have my screen here on full screen and I won't be able to see questions. Does that sound good, Christina?
Yes. I'll keep track of questions.
Perfect, thank you. So again, we are a community choice aggregator, also known as the CCA. CCA started in California in 2002, thanks to Assembly Bill 117. And Assembly Bill 117 essentially introduced choice into the energy market. So for many of you, maybe not all of you, you live in a city and SoCal Edison might be the only person you go buy energy from. And if you want more renewable energy, you may or may not be able to get on their green energy program that has a long waiting list, right? But for cities that choose to take action through their city council to join a CCA, like Orange County Power Authority, those customers are eligible to choose between multiple plans. We have a plan that's cheaper in equivalent generation rates than SoCal Edison. And then we also have plans that are that cost a little bit more, but also provide a lot more renewable energy. And that's really the important thing about CCAs, that we value choice. We understand that some businesses make decisions based on, costs, others make decisions based on sustainability. And depending on where you are on that journey, that can change. And that's a great thing about CCAs, is that continues to change. We have been around as a concept, right, for over 20 years. And we've been growing quickly. We now represent about 25% of all the electricity generated in California. And that's not just OCPA alone, that's all of our sister agencies. And I'll go through that in a little bit. So just a quick note on OCPA and our mission statement, which is here for you all, is provide renewable energy at competitive rates and equitably reinvest to support sustainable communities. And that's our mission. And I wanted to put that in the beginning because we are a not-for-profit. So we prioritize renewable energy and competitive rates, and any anything we have left in our bottom line is going back to be reinvested into our communities. And that could take the form of programs. It could take the form of paying slightly higher for energy for local generation. It could be creating new jobs, or just making sure that we're contracting locally as much as possible. How it works. So Orange County Power Authority is what we call the energy sourcer. So we buy energy that's being created, out in the desert, in a windmill, next to a hydro facility, a geothermal. And then we use SoCal Edison's wires, pulled-in wires, to get that energy to our customers. So we still work with the utility, and if you are one of our customers, you're still getting your bill from SoCal Edison. The main difference is going to be when you look at generation, you're going to see that our name is there instead of SoCal Edison. And as I mentioned, there is over 25 of what are called CPAs. Some of you that are in LA are probably more familiar with Clean Power Alliance. Some of you that are closer to San Diego are probably familiar with San Diego Community Power or Clean Energy Alliance. And again, we're all doing the same thing. We're not-for-profits providing hopefully more renewable energy at a cheaper cost to our communities. And this is the nuts and bolts, right? This is kind of what governs a lot of my day-to-day processes. It's important to note, just in case you reach out to me, procurement and contracts is not my only function here at OCPA. I also oversee IT, HR, and some internal operations. So you may or may not get a couple of days delay on my response. But when it comes to procurement and setting up a new contract, this is kind of the first thing I look at. What are those services expected to cost us? If it's below K, our procurement policy says that there's no formal or informal proposals required. I'm not really sure why that was established before I got here, but I can tell you all that we get 3 quotes for just about everything. Obviously, the lower the value of the service or the good we're looking for, the less formal it is. And you could kind of see that reflected in front of you. Between 10,000 to 50,000, our policy does require informal proposals from at least 3 vendors. And again, informal, lower detail. If I needed to, this could even be a phone call. Say you're not available to, type up a document and give us all the details. If you want to schedule a call and provide all that information over a phone, I'll take notes. I'll include that in the paperwork when I submit this for approval. Because getting quotes is one thing, lining them up and showing my team why we're deciding to go with one vendor or another is another piece. So just a quick tip for you all, it doesn't always have to be a written proposal. Sometimes you could talk directly to the procurement manager or the contracts person. I will tell you that moving from an organization like the County of Orange, which has 18,000 employees, to Orange County Power Authority, which has 20 employees, there's big differences. Part of that is here at the Orange County Power Authority, I wear more hats. So sometimes I'm being asked to do something like, add card readers to our office, our brand new office. And I've never understood what a card reader is or how it works or any of that. So especially opportunities like that, picking up the phone, calling the person in charge of the contract or the procurement is important, because the more you teach them, especially if it's not their core business, the more they feel comfortable knowing that you're going to be able to deliver on that for you. So that's just a quick tip. If you're in a business that isn't that cut and dry, or maybe you're talking to someone who doesn't know your business so closely, sometimes a good conversation introducing yourself will be easier, because that person now understands that there's a relationship there. There's a little bit of good grace built, and now you get to, potentially highlight your capabilities and what your company can do a couple more times. Following the 10 to 50,000, there's a 50 to 100,000. This is, getting into that higher dollar amount. These are informal written proposals, and written proposals are required. And again, it is at least 3 vendors. In this situation, we would be looking for more detail. Information from the quotes, generally not identically, but that is what ends up on the contract later. So we do want a lot more written detail if the dollar amount is climbing. And it just kind of depends, right? If you're selling us something that costs 50,000 and then your markup is 2,000 or whatnot, then there's not a lot of conversation there. But if you're selling something that requires time, staff, a lot of stuff, there's a story to tell there. So I think being able to communicate to us that you're pricing that accurately and where that money goes to is important. The best example I could give this is, maybe 5 years ago, I did some construction at my house. I reached out to multiple contractors. One of them gave me a quote for 120,000. And it had a beautifully designed marketing material and, these really nice projections on how much my rent and value would go up and just a lot of nice stuff, right? The second one just told me flat out 90,000, did not tell me how, who, where, why, anything, just a flat number. And then the third one came to my house, walked through my motivation on why I wanted to, do this construction, explained to me different hurdles that I might run into with my design process, made suggestions to save money, and then sent me a quote that maybe was not the most beautiful quote, but it had enough information plus that conversation for me to say, I feel comfortable doing business with this person. And that's kind of how I decided in my personal life why to make that choice, right? Not necessarily the most polished or the most highest quality service, but someone that I want to do business with that felt like was gonna deliver for sure. And I'm mentioning this to you here because I do think that is also a very effective strategy in the private world, in the business world. So when you're working with someone, and again, if your business is technical, make sure you're reaching out and making those contacts. Letting them know if they have questions that you're happy to help, that will go a very long way. And then lastly, over 100,000, those are formal written proposals and those are part of the RFP process. I will be going through our RFP process and steps and how to look at those steps. But before I switch from this slide, I do want to note that as a utility, because we do provide we provide energy to customers. Our number one priority is stability for our customers and making sure that they get what they need at a high level of service. So we do not always go with the lowest bid. When it is a low dollar value, or I'm buying chairs, or I'm buying something that, is more cut and dry, yes, we look for lower prices. But if it's a service, if it's something that we know is gonna impact our customers, represent our brand, and maybe, a little more so, especially if there's data involved or stuff like that, we may pay more money to have added safety and security in the service for the good that we are receiving. So I mentioned contracts. I did see some folks on the call, and I know there's some very sophisticated business people on the phone. I saw a lot of AI note takers, so I know you all are pretty well versed on a lot of options. But for anybody who hasn't done business with a organization like a city, a county, a special district, Orange County Power Authority is considered a special district. But again, we're more commonly referred to as community choice aggregators. Here is a screenshot of our professional services agreement. Technically, it's just a template. And as you can see, it is 18 pages long. It could be pretty intimidating if you're about to do business with us and we send you this 18-page document and you're like, what did I just get myself into? This is just a document that holds a lot of key information, and I have it listed on the left for you so you can take a look at kind of what we're looking at, which is parties, who are we doing business with, and we're looking for the proper name on your business license, the name of the service or project. This is something that helps us in accounting, understanding where to bill different things when we get those invoices. The agreement will have your term. Are we contracting you for 1, 2, 3 years? Is there renewal years? How many of them? In the contract as well, there will be compensation, the pricing for your services, if it's hourly, what your hourly table and rates are. And most importantly, on every government contract I've seen, or most of them at least, there is a not to exceed, which means what is the absolute most that this government organization can pay you for these services, and that will be listed in the contract. So I will let you know, it is our responsibility to keep track of that, but it is also yours. So, and I say that because sometimes it takes a lot of work to go back and add money to a contract. In addition to that, in the contract, you'll see who the representatives are, day-to-day operations. So it would likely be someone like you, someone who's gonna be running the service, an operations manager. If it's, goods and service, someone who's out in the distribution facility. And then delivery of notices, if we wanna communicate with each other formally. In reference to our terms and conditions, where do we deliver those notices? I did bold standard terms and conditions because like 70% of the pages you see in front of you are just that, standard terms and conditions. How quickly do we pay you after you send us an invoice? What insurance requirements do we expect our vendors to carry? What happens if, the Orange County Power Authority asks for extra work? How is that handled? There's any number of standard terms and conditions, and what we do, just to be very transparent about this, is we include it in our RFP documents. And in that RFP document, which we'll also look at in a little bit, or an overview of a document, I should say. We will include the standard terms and conditions because you will see the scope of work or the service that we want to contract for, what our professional services agreement is, because we kind of expect you as a RFP applicant to agree to our terms and conditions. But also the RFP process is an opportunity for you to say, hey, I looked at your terms and conditions, but this doesn't seem appropriate. And I could give you one good example. So in our standard terms and conditions, it says that any products that we paid to be developed are technically ours, and that intellectual property is also ours. And that works great when you're doing financial forecasting. That works great when you're doing energy forecasting, when it's, intellectual processes that rely on data and a lot of information. A lot of the information which is ours and is about our customers, hence why we care so much about safety and data protection. So in that situation, that term applies well. But when we hired an IT company, they mentioned, hey, the program that we use to service you, we have contracted them to use them with bigger companies like an Adobe, like a Microsoft, like others, right? So that intellectual property cannot be ours because it was not theirs to begin with. So there's kind of examples where you can, come to the table with us and explain to us how that term may or may not apply in your contract, especially if that term makes you feel uncomfortable. And we could talk about that. There was also another example where we require automobile insurance, and the contractor kind of explained to us how their business does not require autos, and why we're hiring them also does not have autos. So we were able to waive that for them. So it's a quick example of how, that is a conversation. It's not necessarily something that you have to agree on, but in general, they're pretty standard terms. And then just the last three things, Exhibit A is the scope of services. What would we be hiring you to do? What are we paying you to do? Exhibit B would be schedule of services. How are those services going to be provided, at what rate, and how will you bill them? And then lastly, what are your billing rates and compensation? And this is just so the finance team has very clear places to reference when you send us invoices and we're getting ready to pay you. So I know I've covered a lot of information, so I'm just gonna stop there to see if anybody has a question on any of the previous slides.
Hi, Sol, there's a question here.
Yeah.
It said, can they get a copy of the contract example to look at, in order to do their due diligence and make sure they're
Oh,
aware of all requirements?
yeah, definitely. Can you put my email in the chat? I mean, I'll share it with you, Christina, as well, but if you want to drop my email in the chat and they want it faster, I could share it with them too.
Yeah, absolutely. And then usually what I do is I also do a follow-up email. So then I can
Perfect.
send I sent this one. Yes. Okay. And then there's also another question. Let me see. There's a question on certifications, but I think maybe you'll go over that later. So it says, what agency certifications do you accept?
Um,
Caltrans, CPUC. But maybe
yeah,
that's something that you'll address later on.
yeah, I don't think it's in my presentation, but I do have notes on it and we'll address that in a bit.
Okay, and we will address it in one of the sessions. So this is one of 4 sessions, but we can address that one later on briefly then. And then I think those are the questions for now.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so moving on, I talked about in this slide, when we need informal, which is the top 3 versus formal quotes, which is the bottom one. And here I put something to kind of help you think about the level of effort that you should be putting into some quotes. And again, this applies to us. It might be different for stuff, but if you have more questions and you want to see how it would apply in different situations, I could give you my advice from my professional background, not necessarily what I think you should be doing. So informal quotes, again, those are below 100,000 for our business. Sometimes I ask for informal quotes when I'm looking for a new service or I'm unsure about costs. I'll give you an example. We thought we were going to need recruiting services and we probably will. But when we went out to see what those services cost, we realized that we weren't ready to spend that type of money at the moment. So we're essentially pushing back that because more information changed. But that was informal because we didn't really know what we needed. We were doing some price discovery. But what would happen in that case is we would then re-invite those same people who gave us quotes in the informal process to bid on our formal process. And again, if you're involved in the informal side, even if it's just like project discovery, a lot of the information you're providing in that sense is going to be what you need to provide in the formal quote, right? So it's not a waste of time to engage with your procurement managers, even if they haven't released a solicitation. Next up, and again, if we're exploring a new service and that service is below the 100,000 or even further down, it could be quite easy to get a contract going, especially if it's like a one-time purchase, something for like a food, an event, some rentals or low-cost services like office repair, handyman. One important note for a place like ours is once we get some really good vendors for some stuff, sometimes it costs us more time and money to get quotes than it does to call back that person that we know was the best quote when we called them 3 months ago. And they're probably still going to be responsive and they're going to provide good work. So next up, we have a main goal on an informal quote is to communicate the pricing and then the services or goods to be provided. I would say whenever anybody asks you for a quote, don't hide any of that information, right? Let them know what your pricing terms are going to be for what they're asking for, and then include what is included in that price. Because sometimes you just see a nice big round number, you don't really know what went into it. Other times you see, I've been in a situation where I get 3 quotes. Most of them are pretty close, with one being the cheaper one. And then I'll see that on one quote, it says A, B, C, D, E, F, G is included. This is extra. And then I'll see, the third quote maybe mentions it. So I'll pick up the phone and I'll call the other 2 quotes to get detail. And then I realize that one person does not include that in their pricing at all. And those are all going to be upcharges. And the other one is going to be, doesn't even provide that service. So in this situation, it didn't even come down to the price, right? It came down to the services and where we think we can get a more cut and dry service for what we need. So that's again, part of what I want you all to walk away with today is pricing is always important. But if your pricing is not the most competitive, there's a lot of ways you can make up for it. For informal, again, a lot of information is helpful, but don't add too much. It's exploratory, it's new information. Whenever you submit a quote, ask that person, hey, you can always end your email by saying, I can also provide A, B, C, or here's a link to my sample work. That way, if they need more information, they know how to find it, but you're not giving them a 10-page document with the price on the 9th page. And lastly, for us, informal quotes are not generally evaluated by a panel. There are exceptions and there's times where we will do it, but not generally. Moving on to the formal column, these are for RFPs. And again, that is anything where the contract is over $100,000. Generally, this is an established need or a core service of OCPA. So we know we need this service. And we know we're going to need it this year. We know we're going to need it next year, and we're probably going to need it, 3, 4, 5 years after that. These are essential to OCPA operations and are either related to a project that's coming up, or it's just part of a business that CCAs generally contract or that we are choosing to contract. In this situation, this is definitely, put your best foot forward. There's not as much back and forth unless the panel requests interviews. So the proposals are evaluated by a panel. So if, maybe you spent all your time adding, all these great sample works, but you spent less time answering the question, it's going to be hard for that panel to give you points, even though they like all your extra work or all the sample work you provided. It's going to be hard for them to tie it back to that proposal. So I always say, remember that the proposals are being evaluated. That's why it's an RFP. And what you're trying to communicate is why we should partner with your company. Formal proposals, any contracts over 100,000 do require board approval. And I think the best way to approach this is think of yourself as helping the administrators. When we're looking for an RFP, we're not necessarily looking for anybody to say no to. We're looking for that person, that group, that company that we want to work with because they presented the case, right? They presented their company as a company that's reliable, as a company with good communication, as a company that is transparent about their processes and their prices. So if you can demonstrate that in your responses, I think you will do very well. A few notes, and I think I mentioned the first one already. Despite the flexibility in our procurement process, we as a best practice, we'll still get 3 written quotes for everything, even if it's under that $5,000, $10,000 threshold. Unless it's, we're very busy, we've worked with someone before, there may be a situation where we wouldn't because we have that flexibility, but we generally will. Level of detail requested should meet the level of service. So that's important. If someone's asking you, for a one-time purchase and it's gonna, bring your business a few $100s in profit, maybe you don't want to spend a ton of time developing a response or a bid. But if it is, something that you think is going to be essential to your business's income and you really want that revenue, that's kind of a sign for you that you need to be spending a little more time. I always encourage people, like, when you write a proposal, it makes sense to you. You wrote it, you're the expert, right? Give it to someone who doesn't know the subject matter as well as you do and ask him if the flow makes sense, if the information is easy to find, all that other stuff. And then whenever you can, communication is always helpful. If it's an informal bid, if you got reached out through an email, if you saw a social media post or something online and you're responding to it, that's considered informal. You could reach out to the buyer and ask them questions about what they're looking for. If you saw a formal solicitation or it's called a RFP, or you saw it come through BidNet, through, I forget what the other names of those programs are, that's formal. There's going to be a question and answer process. Definitely take advantage of it. when I see people and asking questions, I'm seeing someone who really wants to understand what our needs are and is gonna work on getting a very polished proposal in. I'm always appreciative of that. So request for proposals, just a quick overview of how we approach an RFP and what our process is. First, there's that need identified. You know, one of our directors, one of our managers says, I'm gonna be starting this new project and I know I'm gonna need this much help. We've been talking about it with the board. The need is identified. So that person who will oversee the project or who will oversee the contract becomes the product owner. And they're the ones who help develop the scope of work. And this is essentially what you see, Orange County Power Authority is looking for someone to provide XYZ services. That's scope of work. And then we'll add more detail on what we think those scopes of services should entail. When you see a scope of work or a scope of services in an RFP, you should consider that as draft because we are telling you as potential bidders what we think we need. In your RFP, you are able to kind of suggest changes or explain why you would do it differently. I think that shows a lot of experience and a lot of careful consideration. Or you can just quote straight to the RFP scope of work and then add, this is what other services I could provide either in kind, or this is what I would charge for other stuff I would recommend to it. So, as I mentioned, the RFP document is essentially the scope of work, which is generally 1 or 2 pages of the services we're looking for. The professional services agreement, sorry, I shouldn't have used that acronym there, PSA, the professional services agreement. That's this 18-page document here that you see, which is very standard. Once you get used to one of these for us, all of our contracts will look very similar. And then the RFP process, which is essentially starting on number 4, giving you an opportunity to ask questions. We answer. Number 5, the proposals are due. They get moved over to a panel to review. If some companies are still very close and we are having trouble kind of deciding who to go with, there will be interviews requested, but they're not required, which is why it's important to make sure that your proposal is, not your first draft. You might want to, work on it, take a break from it, make sure that it flows well, make sure that someone who knows nothing about your business is going to be able to understand what you're trying to communicate. And then after the panel makes that decision, recommendations go to the board. And this is important to remember, this is just a recommendation to our board. Any contract over 100,000 is up to the board to approve and decide. If it's below 100,000, that our CEO has signing authority. And I just kind of want to make that differentiation. I want to make that call out the difference, sorry. And then lastly, number 10 is the agreement. The agreement is essentially the professional services agreement, which I've showed you before, or an outline, which we're going to send out in the follow-up email. And that agreement is going to have the details that you provided in your proposal or the final ones that were negotiated after your proposal was selected. And then lastly, always, and I see this a lot, always budget to have a monthly check-in with anybody you're working with. I think it's a pretty standard process from a government contract manager to check in with your vendor monthly. If it's a service like, janitorial or some other stuff, maybe your contract manager isn't going to want to talk to you daily, and maybe email and phone calls are going to be fine. But if it's something that's a little more involved, please make sure you're budgeting for staff time to check in with the contract owners and follow up as well. Here's a couple proposals, and these aren't real proposals. I just took a couple of snippets from the internet, and I do see these 2 types a lot. At the top, we see a very, I'll call it vanilla black and white proposal. And in the bottom, we see something that is, very decorative, You could tell someone, put a lot of thought into the layout, that kind of stuff. It's technically a template online. I can tell you when I'm looking at proposals, I prefer the top one. I prefer easy to read text. I prefer headings that correspond to the information that's being asked for. There's even a table there, which is probably, how you can kind of break down your pricing information. And the reason is because if you're keeping it simple, then the person who's reviewing it is not misinterpreting much of the information you're saying. They understand where you're going. As far as graphics and images, logos are great. Add your website information. It does not need to get too dense. Sometimes I've seen that people add so many images into their proposal that the email filters will block them out because they exceed the limit. So just be careful with a lot of that extra stuff. I would recommend if you apply to proposals a lot, create an index, a little table, and add it to the end of your proposal that links back to projects, and those projects are on your website. That will make it easier for people to go back and look at your work without necessarily impacting your proposal by not being clear on what you're showing them. I would say avoid large proposals. If they're not asking you for a ton of pages, you probably shouldn't be giving them a ton of pages. I've always liked the approach of taking what they're asking you for, asking or answering those questions directly in nice short form with context when it's needed, and then adding supplemental information after that. Because chances are, if they like what you're saying in the formal proposal, they're gonna go look at all your additional information because they're getting excited about potentially working with you. If the nuts and bolts aren't there or are not easy to find in your proposal, you might get scored lower because they're misinterpreting some of the information you're putting forward. Let's see. I mentioned to be selective about the sample work. It's better to link to things. Table of contents. There's nothing I love to see more than a table of contents and some page numbers. And I'm just saying, like, this makes this to me, and I don't evaluate everything, so this is more of my sense. It's early signs of how easy this contractor might be to work with. If they're responding to information on the proposal the way you asked for it, if they have good habits, they're responding on time, those are good signs that the vendor you're communicating with is gonna be is going to be responsive enough to do good quality work. And here I mentioned that I would talk about the core services. These are services that we are regularly contracting for. And by regularly, I say every 3 years. Because what we do is when we go out for an RFP, we generally move to a 3-year contract. And that 3-year contract could be renewed, it could not renew. Sometimes we'll do a 2-year contract plus 3 1-year renewals. Sometimes it'll just be a 3-year contract, and then we'll go out for RFP again. Starting at the top, we do contract for accounting. That's regular, finance accounting and independent auditors. So as a CCA and managing the level of money that we manage, we do need to be audited regularly, so we have an RFP out for that. Marketing and communications, a big part of our business is telling people what we do and how, so most people don't even know they're our customers. So marketing and communications is a big part. We have a team that will buy media slots for us, that will create social media posts, brochures, one-pagers, fact sheets, all that stuff, promote it, post it on social media, boost it, everything related to marketing. A second piece of our business that's pretty big is print and promotional services. So 3 to 4 times a year, we have to send out mass mailers to our customers. At least 2 of them go to every single customer. So as you can imagine, mailing out, sending mail to 180,000 customers costs a lot of money. So we have a couple print shops that we are looking to establish a contract with for those mailers. Then in addition to that, a trend that I've identified is that if a shop is doing large scale printing services, they're also working with giveaways and branded materials, which we also use when we go out to do outreach at the park, when we go to a city event, when we go to a community center. So we also know that we will be buying a lot of promotional materials throughout the year. So we're now starting to work that into our RFP process. The bottom one is power portfolio management. Orange County Power Authority was founded in 2021. We started service in 2022. And as you can imagine, from the date that OCPA was founded and formalized to when we started serving electricity, that happened really fast. The reason OCPA and other CCAs are able to do that, in addition to working with utilities, is that there are, power portfolio managers and other companies out there that helped us kind of procure all the energy we needed to start our service and helps us manage our portfolio. That's something that we currently contract for, in addition to using it in-house, and that relationship is going to continue to evolve over time. As we get new staff, they might do less of something, more of something else, and it's just constantly going to be changing. And I'll get to potential changes in a little bit. As I mentioned, I also oversee IT, includes support desk, website. We have a vendor for website maintenance. And then we have a IT staff who comes in once a week to help staff with any important program updates, troubleshooting, any issue they may be having in their computer, anything related to that. And then we also have contracts that are project related. If we're gonna start a new project and we need help forecasting, if we need recruitment to hire another batch of staff, if we're gonna be doing a community survey and we want a vendor who can speak different languages and has a lot of access to prominent community organizations and groups, we might go out and contract for that. So it could be project related. My approach and what I recommend you do is, if you think you want to work with an organization or you think you could serve them, I think Christina is going to cover the capability statement at a later session, but reach out to their procurement manager, reach out to their admin staff and say, this is who I am and this is what we do. We'd love the chance to work with you or talk to you. And what I'll do is I generally take most of those meetings and I will know, this is an IT company or this person does this, and I have my folders. So whenever we do an RFP, I'll make sure that the RFP goes out to everybody registered under the specific codes. But then I'll also go back, look at everybody who's reached out to me on the past on that topic and call it out for them and be like, hey, thanks again for reaching out last year. We talked about this service. We're not going out for RFP, or we have a small need related to this. Can you please provide a bid? And that's generally how we approach stuff. And yeah, so moving on, for OCPA open solicitations, there's really 3 ways to stay connected with us on what's coming up. One of them is through our website. If you go to www.ocpower.org and go to the top where it says resources, under the blue magnifying glass there, you're going to see our RFP, RFQ solicitations. So you'll see anything we have open there. Following that, BidNet Direct, that we are registered under BidNet Direct. If you go into BidNet Direct, you can register under different codes. I'm sure you are all more familiar than those codes than I am. And anytime a RFP or opportunity goes out that is related to your business, you'll get a notification. And my understanding is that you can subscribe to Orange County Power Authority, and you can also subscribe to other codes. I would recommend, if you are in Orange County and you definitely are excited about working with us, subscribe to our newsletter. that's going to be a good way for you to see what opportunities are coming up, what we're working on, and kind of where we're spending a lot of our time with on. And that way, when you come back to put a bid or a proposal for us, you kind of know about what our values are, what projects we're working on, who we're working with. A lot of that will go a long way. And then lastly, social media, we're on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And then there's my email as well in case you want to reach out and do a quick one-on-one. And then, yeah, any questions? I wanted to get to the questions part so we can spend a little more time there. And I'll start off with a question about certification, since I know that one's already in there. And Christina, if you can queue up whatever next ones come up, that would be amazing. So because we are governed by the CPUC, we do follow the CPUC certification process, which is supplier clearinghouse. But we do look for and like to see other certifications, small business, anything that is in the region. I'm familiar with what the County of Orange uses. I know there's diversity networks. So everything and anything is welcome, and when you do have those certifications, please point them out. But the one that I would say we care about the most, mostly because I have to create a report every year about it, are the supplier clearinghouse certifications. I was asked once if we have a local preference or if there's any sort of preferential scoring that we give based on certifications, and the answer is no. We don't give preferential treatment in scoring, but whenever there's situations where we have very identical vendors and even the pricing is not that different, we will prioritize businesses that are either in our service territory, businesses that have strong sustainability practices. So that could be like environmental practices. They're very conscious about their carbon emissions and their carbon footprint, and they work hard to keep that low. Or they're very sustainable in their employment practices. They're a fair and equitable employer. They pay their staff livable wages. They offer health benefits. We love to hear that information, and that's great stuff to add into your bids and quotes. And yeah, I think I'll stop there in case there's follow-up questions.
Yeah, so there is a follow-up question from Anya. So she's raising her hand. So I'm gonna allow her to talk.
And I'm
so Anya,
okay. Yeah, I'm gonna pop out of the presentation so we can.
okay.
Yeah.
Hi, this is actually Matt, Anja's husband. She had to step into another meeting. We are coffee caterers, and I wanted to know if you had any opportunities like that for community engagement, or if there's any other departments or agencies that you could recommend that might need that service.
And I'm sorry, what did you say your business was?
We're a coffee catering. We're a coffee roaster, and we also do coffee catering, like espresso car catering.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So it's funny that you bring that up. And this is why it's great to ask questions. So there are two meetings a month that we have here in the office. One is our board of directors meeting, and one is our community advisory committee meeting. And we hold those after hours or starting at 4:30 p.m. or 6 p.m. And because we are asking people to come to our office at an off time, dinner time, right? We generally do provide snacks and food for our board members, for people who come to those meetings. So we could potentially be interested in setting up some sort of ongoing agreement where your business could come into our office and provide a certain level of snacks and refreshments, whether it be staffed or unstaffed, right? So yeah, shoot me an email and I would love to talk. And sorry, one last thing, Matt, if it's not something that we have budgeted now, the fact that you're reaching out to me, I can pitch it to my team. I can, we could do some discussion about what that could cost, and then, I'd give you more information on whether that is something we would be interested in long-term or not.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And then there's a question. Is it possible to do 5 bids a day?
5 bids a day. What,
Yeah, let me see what the context would that be. If you want to, whoever asked the question, if they can provide more context, it's just, let's see.
Um, it just so speaking of volume, if you're applying to 5 RFPs a day, just gonna throw it out there. I would say if you are doing that kind of volume, you're probably in an industry that's very cut and dry, and there's not a lot of planning or an example, print. Paper costs so much, delivery costs so much, like you're probably in that business that's very streamlined. If it's more of a service, customer service, outreach, coordinating, things like that, I feel like those take a lot more time.
Okay, and let me just see. I think those are the questions for now, but there's some questions about the recording. So we will be providing a recording link, and then Sol, would you be available to provide your slides as well?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, perfect. Yes. Okay, sounds good. So, so thank you so much. I'm trying to say, I think that all the questions are answered. But if not, what we'll provide is your contact information. And then I wanted to, this is my contact information for anyone who's interested. So what we do is we support agencies like MATS with regards to, let's say, providing capability statements, applying for certifications, and then also reviewing the request for proposals. So please feel free to reach out to me and then also get my contact information.
Hey, Christina, looks like Cooper might have a question.
Oh, go for it. Yes. Let's see. Oh, sure. Okay, Cooper, let me see if I can.
And then one last thing I wanted to say about the supplier clearinghouse certification. So one way I've incorporated that into our procurement process is every time I need any service, I look for local leads. I ask for other procurement buyers, Yelp, all that stuff to find leads. But then I also go to the supplier clearinghouse and I pull 3 or 4 leads from there too. So I use the supplier clearinghouse certification with the CPUC to find leads, in addition to what I can find locally. So just a quick plug in case you're wondering on whether it's worth your time or not.
Got it. Okay. So Cooper, if you want to ask a live question, can you raise your hand, and then that way it's easier for me to find you. All right. There you go. Raised hand. Okay. Cooper. Oh, there you go. There you go, Cooper.
Great.
And then I
Thanks
think
very
next
much.
one.
So my question is, my organization provides home energy decarbonization concierge services. So we help homeowners navigate heat pumps and induction stoves. And one challenge we found is that sometimes procurement folks don't know that suppliers like us even exist.
Yeah.
So how do we go about sort of informing OCPA and maybe other CCAs that this is a thing they could buy?
Yeah. No. I'm definitely familiar with what I think you're offering as far as construction services and upgrades, because it goes beyond what an energy company could do. It goes into cities and permitting and all that stuff. So love the type of business you're in. Reach out to me. I can connect you to our program team. They may or will be doing some sort of RFP or procurement for a business that sounds similar to what you do. So thank you for
Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Yeah, and then also Ottilie has a question.
Okay.
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Thanks for all this information. It was great. So I wanted to ask, my question for you was more or less directed towards medical supplies, durable medical equipment. And then also you mentioned the monthly meetings. So is there somewhere like on the website that also indicates when you have those monthly meetings? And would you happen to have a direct contact for my service, like for medical supplies or any DME?
Yeah, so the monthly meeting, I think, was in reference to when you're responding to a bid. work staff time into your total costs.
Got it.
We do have public meetings here in our office that are related to like our business. I don't know, I'm not sure how durable medical supplies would apply to that. But if you want to
Yeah.
chat online as far as like what kind of leads or ideas you're hoping to, I'm open to having that discussion with you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Saul.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and as I said, after this one, I usually send out a follow-up email. So we'll have Saul's information and then his slides, and then also my information as well. And then so this one are just the upcoming webinars that we'll be having in the next 3 weeks. So for those of you who are interested in knowing what a capability statement is, that will be next week. And then the week after that, we'll be doing one on certifications, including CPUC. And then the last one will be working with bid proposals. So with that said, thank you so much. We are right on time. Yeah. Just a couple minutes later. But thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And then hope to see you. I'll just give you a few more seconds to just um, do this QR code, and then hopefully we'll see you next week. And thank you so much, Saul. We all appreciate the information, and we will get back to you like next week. So hope to see you then. Thank you.
Thank you all. See you next week.